A boy gives a homeless woman a Christmas gift, and her reaction leaves everyone in tears. The icy December air sliced like razors, but in the town square of Willow Creek, the Christmas spirit seemed to warm even the cobblestones. Twinkling lights danced on snow-laden trees as families laughed and children raced around, eyes bright with anticipation. Amidst this festive flurry, a lone figure sat motionless, almost invisible to the cheerful passers-by. Agnes, her 72 years etched on her face like a roadmap of forgotten journeys, observed the world with eyes that no longer reflected the sparkle of the Christmas decorations. Her gnarled fingers, trembling slightly, clutched a worn newspaper, not to read but to provide a semblance of purpose, a fragile barrier between her and the world that continued without noticing her. As children's laughter echoed through the square, something shifted in Agnes's gaze. For a fleeting moment, a spark of life danced in her faded blue eyes. It was as if, for an instant, she had been transported to another time, another place. Who was Agnes before she became just another shadow on the streets of Willow Creek? What brought her here, sitting alone on a night celebrating togetherness and family? Across the square, a boy stood out from the crowd. Alex Walker, 12, was the embodiment of Willow Creek privilege. His fine wool coat and the bags from upscale stores in his hands told a story of comfort and abundance. Yet, there was something in his eyes, a restlessness, a searching, that clashed with the perfect picture. Alex stopped abruptly, his gaze fixed on something beyond the lights and music. He had noticed Agnes. For a moment, two worlds collided silently across that shared glance. What did Alex see in the old woman's eyes that made him pause? What thoughts crossed his young mind as he observed that solitary figure amidst the collective joy? The boy took a step towards Agnes, then hesitated. His hand unconsciously tightened on the handles of the shopping bags. An internal battle unfolded behind his green eyes. He glanced at the bags, then back at Agnes. A decision was being made, a choice that could alter not just this night, but perhaps the course of several lives. With sudden determination, Alex turned and hurried towards a nearby shop. The door chime jingled merrily as he entered, contrasting with the urgency in his movements. What was he planning? What sudden impulse had spurred him to action? Inside the store, Alex moved as if in a trance, his eyes scanning the shelves with an intensity unusual for someone so young. His hands touched various items, a book, a mug, a pair of gloves, before finally settling on a soft wool scarf. The saleswoman watched curiously as the wealthy boy asked her to gift-wrap the scarf, adding a card to the purchase. Minutes later, Alex emerged from the store, a small package now added to his bags. He paused on the sidewalk, his eyes searching for and finding Agnes still seated on her solitary bench. The boy took a deep breath, as if about to plunge into unknown waters. Step by step, Alex began to cross the square. Each meter seemed to carry the weight of a decision that went far beyond a simple act of Christmas charity. What compelled this privileged boy to approach a stranger in need? What consequences would this unlikely encounter bring? As Alex drew closer, Agnes looked up from her newspaper. For a moment, their eyes met again, this time without the distance of the square between them. In that instant, suspended in time, two souls, one young and full of possibilities, the other marked by time and hardship, were about to collide. What would happen next? What words would be exchanged? How would this unexpected meeting between Alex, the boy from Willow Creek's high society, and Agnes, the mysterious woman of the streets, change their lives? Alex was now just steps away from Agnes. His hand clutched the newly purchased package, his heart pounding in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, the first words of this fateful encounter about to be uttered. And so, on that cold Christmas night in Willow Creek, two drifting lives were about to intertwine in ways neither could have imagined. The first chapter of an extraordinary story was about to be written, a story of unlikely connections, buried secrets, and the transformative power of a simple act of kindness. The soft fabric of the newly gifted scarf brushed against Agnes's wrinkled face, stirring long-dormant memories. As her trembling fingers caressed the wool, her mind wandered to a distant past, so different from her current reality that it felt like another lifetime. 1962, Willow Creek Elementary School. Young Agnes Peterson, fresh out of college, entered the classroom with a radiant smile. Her heels clicked on the polished wooden floor, and the scent of chalk and new books filled the air. The children, eyes wide with expectation, fell silent immediately. "Good morning, class," Agnes greeted, her melodious voice carrying a slight Midwestern twang. "Today, we're going to embark on a journey through history." With graceful gestures and vivid words, Agnes transported her students to the pyramids of Egypt, the medieval castles of Europe, the lush rainforests of the Amazon. Her passion for teaching was palpable, infectious even to the most disinterested students. At the end of class, a small, bespectacled boy timidly approached her desk. "Miss Peterson," he murmured, "I want to be a teacher just like you someday." Agnes's heart swelled with joy. It was for moments like these that she lived. The following years brought more success. Agnes became a beloved figure in the Willow Creek community. Her innovative teaching methods were praised, and she was invited to speak at educational conferences. Her personal life blossomed too. She married David, a kind bookstore owner, and together they had a daughter, Lily, 1978, the Peterson residence. "Mom, look, I got an A+ on my history test." Lily, now 12, rushed into Agnes's arms, proudly waving a paper. Agnes hugged her daughter, exchanging a knowing glance with David. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," she said, kissing the girl's forehead. That evening, as the family sat down to dinner, excitedly discussing plans for their summer vacation, Agnes felt a wave of gratitude. Her life was perfect, filled with love, purpose, and joy. Little did she know that fate was about to take a cruel turn. July 18th, 1978. The day began like any other. Agnes made breakfast, David left for work, and she took Lily for a picnic in the park. In the afternoon, David called, asking her to meet him at the bookstore for a surprise. Agnes and Lily got in the car, buzzing with anticipation. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle had begun to fall. As they rounded the bend in the road leading to the bookstore, a truck suddenly appeared, skidding on the wet pavement. The deafening sound of twisting metal and shattering glass filled the air. Then, silence. Agnes awoke 3 days later in the hospital, her body covered in bruises and cuts. The news she received shattered her world. David and Lily had not survived the accident. The months that followed passed in a blur of grief and despair. Agnes withdrew from everything and everyone. Her classroom, once a haven of joy, now felt like a museum of painful memories. Every child reminded her of Lily. Every book evoked David. Unable to cope with the pain, Agnes resigned from her teaching position and isolated herself at home. Bills began to pile up, but she barely noticed. Friends and colleagues tried to help, but she pushed them away, lost in her own world of sorrow. A year after the accident, Agnes was evicted from her home. With only a suitcase of clothes and a few photographs, she found herself on the streets of Willow Creek, the same town that had once celebrated her as an exemplary educator. The first few days were a shock. Agnes wandered the streets, disoriented, sleeping on park benches and begging for food at restaurants. Her once elegant appearance gave way to threadbare clothes and matted hair. The looks of pity and discomfort from passers-by were like constant stab wounds. Eventually, Agnes developed a survival routine. She woke early, before shopkeepers arrived, to check dumpsters for edible scraps. She spent her days at the public library, one of the few places where she could escape the cold and relive her former life through books. At night, she sought shelter in alleys or under awnings, always alert to the dangers of the street. Winter was particularly cruel. Agnes shivered under layers of newspapers, dreaming of the warmth of her former home. On nights like these, the temptation to give up was almost irresistible. But something inside her, perhaps the same strength that had made her an inspiring teacher, kept her going. It was during one of these harsh winters that Sarah entered Agnes's life. Sarah Miller, a young social worker fresh out of graduate school, was determined to make a difference. She noticed Agnes during her nightly rounds and was intrigued by the quiet dignity of the homeless woman. "Hello," Sarah approached cautiously one night, offering a cup of hot coffee. My name is Sarah. Can I sit with you for a moment? Agnes looked at the young woman with a mixture of distrust and curiosity. Something in Sarah's kindness reminded her of her own approach as a teacher. Reluctantly, she nodded. In the following weeks, Sarah visited Agnes regularly, bringing not only food and blankets, but also a genuine willingness to listen. Slowly, fragments of Agnes's story began to emerge. I used to be a teacher, Agnes admitted one night, her voice hoarse from disuse. I had a family, a life. Sarah listened patiently, her heart breaking for Agnes's tragedy, but also inspired by her resilience. She offered help, shelters, rehabilitation programs, even a chance to return to teaching. But Agnes, still trapped in the clutches of trauma and guilt, consistently refused. I don't deserve a second chance, Agnes would say, turning her face to hide the tears. My life ended on that road. Sarah didn't give up. Month after month, year after year, she continued visiting Agnes, becoming a constant presence in her life. Even when Agnes pushed her away, Sarah returned, determined to be the beacon that would guide Agnes back to life. And so, as Agnes remained on the streets of Willow Creek, a tenuous connection to her past and a possible future formed through Sarah. The social worker became the silent guardian of Agnes's memories, patiently waiting for the day when the former teacher would be ready to rebuild her life. Now, sitting on the park bench with Alex's scarf in her hands, Agnes felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The boy's unexpected gesture had cracked the shell she had built around her heart. As the Christmas lights twinkled around her, Agnes wondered, for the first time in decades, if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for a new beginning. The Walker mansion stood majestically atop Oak Hill, its illuminated windows shining like beacons in the Willow Creek night. Alex climbed the marble steps of the entrance, his heart still racing from his encounter with Agnes. The butler, Mr. Smith, opened the door before he even rang the bell. "Good evening, Master Alex," Mr. Smith said, his expression impassive as always. "Our dinner will be served in 20 minutes. Alex nodded absently, his thoughts still in the town square. He climbed the stairs to his room, passing through hallways adorned with expensive artwork and valuable antiques. His room, larger than many apartments, was impeccably tidy thanks to the cleaning staff. Sitting on the edge of his king-size bed, Alex looked around. State-of-the-art video games, a giant flat-screen TV, shelves filled with books he never read. Everything screamed privilege, yet the emptiness in his chest seemed larger than ever. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Alex?" His mother's voice, Catherine Walker, sounded from the other side. "Can I come in?" "Sure, Mum," Alex replied, quickly hiding the receipt from the store where he had bought Agnes's gift. Catherine entered, elegant in her designer suit. Her eyes scanned the room as if searching for something out of place. "How was your day, honey?" "It was interesting," Alex replied, unsure how much he should reveal. Catherine smiled, but the gesture didn't reach her eyes. "That's good. Your father and I have an important meeting after dinner, so don't be late, okay?" Before Alex could respond, Catherine's cell phone rang. She answered it immediately, leaving the room with a distracted wave to her son. Alex sighed. It was always like this, brief moments of attention followed by long absences. His parents, John and Catherine Walker, were prominent figures in the business world. The Walker empire spanned various industries, and maintaining that empire demanded their full dedication. Going down to dinner, Alex found his 16-year-old sister, Olivia, already at the table. With earbuds in and eyes glued to her phone, she barely registered his arrival. "Hi, Olivia," Alex tried. Olivia glanced up briefly. "Hey," she mumbled, before returning her attention to the screen. The ensuing silence was broken by the arrival of John and Catherine, both still on their phones. They sat down, only ending their calls when the first course was served. "How was school, kids?" John asked, his tone suggesting obligation rather than genuine interest. "Fine," Olivia replied without looking up. Alex hesitated. Part of him wanted to tell them about Agnes, about the gift, about how it felt to do something genuinely good, but the words caught in his throat. "It was good," he finally said. "Excellent," John responded. already checking emails on his smartphone. "Oh, Alex, don't forget you have extra math tutoring tomorrow. We need to keep those grades up for Harvard." Alex nodded, though Harvard was the last thing on his mind at that moment. He picked at the food on his plate, thinking about how Agnes would probably give anything to have a meal like this. Dinner continued in silence, punctuated only by the occasional clink of silverware and phone notifications. Alex observed his family, his father absorbed in emails, his mother planning the next board meeting, Olivia lost in her own digital world. How could they be so close and yet so distant at the same time? After dessert, which no one really enjoyed, John and Catherine stood up. "We have a video conference with London," Catherine explained. "Don't wait up." When his parents left, Alex tried again to connect with Olivia. "Hey, want to watch a movie or something?" Olivia stared at him for a moment, a flicker of something in her eyes. For an instant, Alex thought she might agree, but then she shook her head. "I have plans. Going out." "But it's almost 10 p.m. on a Tuesday," Alex protested. Olivia shrugged. "So, it's not like anyone here cares." With that, she stood and left, leaving Alex alone in the enormous dining room. Back in his room, Alex sat at his desk, pulling the receipt from his pocket. He thought about telling his parents about Agnes, about how it felt to help someone, but then he remembered the countless times he had tried to share something important, only to be dismissed with a distracted, "That's nice, son." No, Alex decided. This moment, this connection with Agnes was something special, something just for him. For the first time in a long time, he felt alive, real, like he had done something that truly mattered. Picking up a pen, Alex began to write in his journal, something he hadn't done in months. "Today, I met someone who made me see the world differently. Her name is Agnes, and I think helping her might be the reason I'm here. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to find a way to make a difference in her life. And maybe, just maybe, that will make a difference in mine too." Closing his journal, Alex looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Agnes was facing another cold night. Determination surged within him. He would do more. He would find a way to truly help. With that thought, Alex drifted off to sleep, dreaming of possibilities and second chances. In the silent, empty mansion, a lonely boy had found a purpose, a connection that transcended the barriers of class and age. And this was just the beginning. Christmas Eve arrived in Willow Creek, bringing with it a fine mist that enveloped the decorative lights in an ethereal glow. The town square was busier than ever, with families rushing to finish their last-minute shopping and children darting about, their laughter echoing in the cold night. Alex Walker approached the square, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might escape his chest. In his hands, he clutched a carefully wrapped package, the scarf he had bought for Agnes. His steps were hesitant, a mixture of anxiety and determination guiding him towards the bench where he had first seen her. As he drew closer, Alex spotted Agnes. She was there, just as before, a solitary figure amidst the festive cheer. Her grey hair was partially covered by a worn beanie, and she huddled inside a coat too thin for the biting cold. Alex stopped a few feet away, taking a deep breath to calm his nerves. "You can do this," he murmured to himself, clutching the package as if it were a talisman. With a final exhale, he took the final steps towards Agnes. "Hi," Alex said softly, his voice almost lost in the murmur of the square. Agnes looked up, surprise evident on her wrinkled face. Her expression quickly shifted to one of caution, years on the streets having taught her to be wary of unexpected approaches. "Yes," she replied, her voice raspy from disuse. Alex swallowed hard, suddenly unsure of how to proceed. I brought you something," he stammered, extending the package with trembling hands. Agnes looked at the gift, then back at Alex, confusion and suspicion battling in her eyes. "For me?" she asked, incredulous. "Why?" Because it's Christmas," Alex replied, gaining a bit more confidence, "and no one should be alone on Christmas." For a moment, Agnes didn't move. Her eyes, faded blue from time and hardship, studied Alex's face as if searching for any sign of deception or cruelty. Finding only sincerity, she slowly reached out to accept the package. With trembling fingers, Agnes began to unwrap the gift. The wrapping paper fell away, revealing a soft wool scarf in a gentle shade of blue that reminded her of a summer sky. Along with the scarf, there was a handmade card. You made this?" Agnes asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex shook his head. "I bought the scarf, but I made the card," he admitted. You can read it if you want." Agnes carefully opened the card, as if it were a fragile treasure. Inside, in childish but careful handwriting, it read, "Dear Madam, I don't know your name, but I wanted you to know that you matter. I hope this scarf keeps you warm, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. Merry Christmas. 100. Sincerely." Agnes's hands began to tremble more visibly. She looked at Alex, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Why?" she asked again, her voice choked with emotion. "Why would you care about an old homeless woman?" Alex felt his own tears welling up. "Because everyone deserves to feel seen," he replied simply. "And because when I saw you here, alone, I thought about how hard it must be. And I wanted to do something, anything, to help." Alex's words seemed to break something inside Agnes. The tears she had held back for so long began to fall freely. She clutched the scarf to her chest, sobbing silently. Around them, people in the square began to notice the scene. Some stopped to watch, curious about what was happening. As the story spread in whispers, more and more people gathered, forming a silent circle around Alex and Agnes. Alex, unsure what to do, gently placed a hand on Agnes's shoulder. "It's okay," he murmured. "It's okay." Agnes looked up, meeting not only Alex's compassionate gaze, but also the emotional faces of the onlookers. Many had tears in their eyes, touched by the scene of unexpected kindness. I don't know what to say." Agnes finally spoke, her voice trembling. "It's been so long since anyone—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Alex understood. Carefully, he picked up the scarf and gently wrapped it around Agnes's neck. "Merry Christmas, Mom," he said with a gentle smile. Agnes touched the scarf, feeling its softness. A hesitant smile, the first in years, began to form on her lips. "Agnes," she said softly. "My name is Agnes." "Merry Christmas, Agnes," Alex corrected, his smile widening. At that moment, someone in the crowd began to softly sing Silent Night. Others joined in, and soon the square was filled with the gentle notes of the Christmas carol. Alex sat down next to Agnes on the bench, both absorbing the moment. The Christmas lights seemed to shine more brightly, and the cold night air felt charged with possibilities. When the song ended, the crowd slowly dispersed, many stopping to wish Agnes and Alex a Merry Christmas. Some even offered further assistance, promising to bring extra food or blankets. Finally, Alex and Agnes were alone again. A comfortable silence settled between them, an unexpected but profound connection forming. "Thank you," Agnes finally said, her voice filled with an emotion that went beyond mere words. "You reminded me that there's still kindness in the world." Alex smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. "And you reminded me what Christmas is really about," he replied. As the night wore on, Alex and Agnes continued to sit side by side, talking softly. An unlikely friendship was blossoming, one that promised to change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. And so, on Christmas Eve in Willow Creek, a simple act of kindness had not only warmed a lonely heart, but also ignited a flame of hope that promised to illuminate many dark days ahead. The sun rose over Willow Creek on Christmas morning, illuminating a town transformed not just by festive decorations, but by a renewed spirit of compassion. The story of Alex and Agnes's encounter spread rapidly, first in hushed, emotional whispers among those who witnessed the scene, then in social media posts, and finally, on the front page of the local newspaper. "Young hero brings true Christmas spirit," proclaimed the headline of the Willow Creek Chronicle. The photo of Alex and Agnes, captured by a bystander the previous night, showed the moment the scarf was placed around Agnes's neck, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude. At the Walker residence, Christmas breakfast was interrupted by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. Smith, the butler, entered the dining room with a disconcerted expression. "Sir, ma'am," he addressed John and Catherine Walker, "there are reporters at the door. They're asking to speak with Master Alex." John lowered his newspaper, his eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Reporters? For Alex? What's this all about?" Before anyone could answer, Olivia, Alex's sister, rushed into the room, her cell phone in hand. "Alex is all over social media," she exclaimed, a mixture of astonishment and admiration in her voice. "Everyone's talking about how he helped a homeless woman on Christmas Eve." All eyes turned to Alex, who shrank in his chair, a mixture of pride and apprehension on his face. I just wanted to help," he mumbled. Catherine stood up abruptly, her face pale. "Alex, you approached a homeless stranger. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "But Mom," Alex protested, "Agnes isn't dangerous. She just needed help." "Agnes?" John interjected, his voice tense. "You're on a first-name basis with this person." The ensuing discussion was heated. Alex's parents, concerned for his safety and the family's reputation, expressed their displeasure with his actions. Alex, in turn, passionately defended his decision to help Agnes. "You always said we should help others," Alex argued, tears of frustration in his eyes. "Isn't that what Christmas is all about?" Olivia, surprisingly, came to her brother's defense. "He's right," she said, her voice firm. "Alex did something amazing. You should be proud of him." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of more cars arriving. Mr. Smith entered again, looking even more flustered. "Sir, there are more reporters arriving. And some people from town are gathering at the gate. They seem to want to thank Master Alex." John and Catherine exchanged worried glances. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, across town, Agnes awoke on her usual park bench, Alex's scarf still wrapped securely around her neck. For the first time in years, she had slept soundly, lulled by a sense of warmth that went beyond the physical. As she opened her eyes, Agnes was startled by a group of people approaching. Her first instinct was fear, years on the streets having taught her to be wary of crowds, but then she noticed the smiles on their faces, the gift bags in their hands. "Merry Christmas, Agnes," a woman said, extending a cup of hot coffee. "We read about you in the paper. We wanted to make sure you had a good Christmas this year." Agnes accepted the coffee with trembling hands, tears once again forming in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. Throughout the morning, more and more people appeared, bringing food, warm clothing, and most importantly, companionship. Agnes found herself telling stories of her life as a teacher, laughing and crying as long-buried memories resurfaced. Among the crowd, a young woman watched the scene with professional interest and personal emotion. Sarah Miller, the social worker, who had tried to help Agnes for years, could hardly believe what she was seeing. "Agnes," Sarah approached cautiously. "It's good to see you like this." Agnes looked at Sarah, recognition and a touch of shame in her eyes. "Sarah, it's okay," Sarah reassured her, sitting down beside her. "I'm just happy to see you getting the help you deserve." The two talked for a long time, Sarah gently probing to see if Agnes would be open to accepting more help now. To her surprise and delight, Agnes slowly nodded. Maybe it's time to try again," Agnes said softly, stroking Alex's scarf. "That boy, he reminded me that there might still be a place for me in this world." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "There's always a place for you, Agnes, and I'm here to help you find it." As the day progressed, the story of Alex and Agnes continued to spread, touching hearts and inspiring action. At City Hall, the mayor called an emergency meeting to discuss new initiatives to help the town's homeless population. At local churches, sermons were rewritten to address the true meaning of Christmas, exemplified by the Young Boys Act. Back at the Walker mansion, Alex finally convinced his parents to let him speak to the press. With wisdom beyond his years, he used the opportunity not to boast, but to draw attention to Agnes's plight and that of others like her. "This isn't about me," he told the assembled reporters. "It's about realizing that we can all make a difference, even with small acts of kindness. Agnes has taught me more about courage and resilience than I could ever have taught her." As cameras flashed and questions flew, John and Catherine watched their son with a mixture of concern and, increasingly, pride. Perhaps they thought Alex had done more than just help a stranger. He had reminded them all of what truly mattered. As night fell over Willow Creek that Christmas, a sense of change hung in the air. A simple act of kindness had sparked a wave of compassion and self-reflection that promised to transform not just the lives of Alex and Agnes, but of the entire community. And as Agnes drifted off to sleep in a warm bed for the first time in years, at a shelter arranged by Sarah, and Alex lay down in his own room, exhausted but content, both felt that this was just the beginning of something much larger than they could have imagined. The days following Christmas brought an unusual routine for Alex. While the town gradually returned to normalcy, he found himself increasingly obsessed with learning more about Agnes. His visits to the local library became frequent, spending hours poring over old newspaper archives and public records. On a particularly cold January afternoon, Alex was flipping through a school yearbook from the 1970s when his eyes caught an image that made him stop. There, smiling brightly in a black and white photo, was a young Agnes Peterson, identified as Willow Creek Elementary's Teacher of the Year. "It can't be," Alex murmured, his fingers tracing the outline of the familiar, yet decades younger, face. Intrigued, he delved deeper into his research. Newspaper articles praised Agnes's innovative teaching methods, her dedication to her students, and her involvement in the community. One, in particular, caught his attention. Local teacher honored with State Education Award. As he read the article, Alex's heart nearly stopped. Among the names of students who provided testimonials about Agnes's impact on their lives, there was one he instantly recognized, John Walker, his father. "No way," Alex whispered, rereading the paragraph several times to make sure he wasn't imagining things. The article quoted a young John Walker. "Miss Peterson isn't just a teacher, she's an inspiration. She made me believe I could achieve anything I set my mind to." With trembling hands, Alex made copies of everything he found and tucked them into his backpack. His mind raced with questions. How could his father have forgotten Agnes? How could someone so important end up on the streets without anyone noticing? Arriving home, Alex rushed to his room, locking the door behind him. He spread his findings out on his bed, trying to piece together this unexpected puzzle. Meanwhile, across town, at the temporary shelter where Agnes was staying, an equally revealing conversation was taking place. Sarah, the social worker, sat beside Agnes, a warm mug of tea between them. The shelter's cozy atmosphere seemed to have softened some of the barriers Agnes had erected over the years. "Agnes," Sarah began gently, "have you ever considered reconnecting with any of your former students? Maybe they could help." Agnes shook her head sadly. "That was so long ago, Sarah. They probably don't even remember me." "You'd be surprised," Sarah insisted. "The impact of a good teacher lasts a lifetime." Something in Sarah's voice made Agnes look at her more closely. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Sarah hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Well, I've been doing some digging of my own. Agnes, did you know that one of your former students is now one of the most influential men in Willow Creek?" Agnes's face creased with confusion. "Who?" "John Walker," Sarah revealed softly. "Alex's father." Agnes paled, her hands gripping the mug tightly. Little Johnny Walker." Tears began to well up in her eyes. "He was such a sweet boy, so full of potential." "He still talks about you, you know," Sarah continued. "I found an old article where he credited you with inspiring him to pursue his dreams." Agnes sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the information. "It's funny," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. "All those years on the streets, and I never knew I was so close to someone I knew." Back at the Walker mansion, Alex was facing an ethical dilemma. Should he tell his father about Agnes, confront him about why he never mentioned his former teacher, or should he speak to Agnes first? Sitting on his bed, surrounded by the fragments of the past, Alex felt torn. Part of him wanted to rush out and tell everyone, certain that this connection could change everything for Agnes. Another part of him feared the complications this revelation might bring. What if his father denied it? What if Agnes didn't want her past exposed? As he wrestled with these questions, Alex heard a soft knock on his door. "Alex," his mother's voice called. "Is everything all right? You've barely left your room today." Quickly, Alex shoved the documents under his pillow. "I'm fine, Mum," he replied, his voice higher pitched than usual. "Just studying." Catherine hesitated on the other side of the door. "Okay, honey, don't forget about dinner." When his mother's footsteps retreated, Alex let out a sigh of relief. He knew he needed to make a decision, but what was the right thing to do? At the shelter, Agnes was having her own internal struggle. The idea of change, however positive, terrified her. Years of survival on the streets had ingrained in her a deep fear of hope and vulnerability. "I don't know if I can do this, Sarah," Agnes confessed during one of their sessions. "What if I fail? What if everything goes wrong again?" Sarah, with her characteristic patience, took Agnes's hand. "It's okay to be afraid, Agnes, but think about how far you've already come. You're stronger than you think." Slowly, day by day, Agnes began to open herself up to the possibilities. She agreed to participate in a literacy program at the shelter, rekindling her passion for teaching. Each small step was a victory over her fears. Back at the Walker mansion, Alex and Olivia faced a new challenge when they were almost caught by their mother discussing their plans. "That was close," Olivia whispered, after they managed to distract Catherine with an elaborate excuse about a joint school project. Alex nodded, the stress of the situation beginning to weigh on him. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this a secret." That night, lying in bed, Alex wondered if he was doing the right thing. The weight of his secret and the complexity of the plan felt overwhelming. But then he remembered Agnes's smile, the spark of hope in her eyes when he visited her. This was bigger than him, bigger than his fear or doubts. With renewed determination, Alex picked up his notebook and began to write. The plan had to work. For Agnes, for his family, and for the entire Willow Creek community, he would make it work. Across town, Agnes looked out the window of the shelter, the scarf Alex had given her still wrapped securely around her neck. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of a different future. A future that, thanks to a young boy with a heart of gold, seemed increasingly possible. The tension in the Walker mansion had reached a breaking point. John and Catherine, tired of their children's vague excuses and evasive behavior, decided it was time for a frank conversation. On a rainy Friday evening, they summoned Alex and Olivia to the living room. "Sit down, both of you," John commanded, his stern voice echoing through the silent room. Alex and Olivia exchanged nervous glances before settling onto the sofa. Catherine positioned herself beside her husband, arms crossed and expression serious. "Alex," Catherine began, "we know something is going on. Your grades are slipping, you're barely home, and now we've discovered you've been regularly visiting a homeless shelter." Alex's heart pounded. He hadn't expected his parents to have uncovered so much. "And you, Olivia," John continued, "have been acting equally suspicious. We think you both owe us an explanation." Alex took a deep breath, realizing the moment of truth had arrived. With an almost imperceptible nod from Olivia, he began to speak. "Mom, Dad, it's about Agnes," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "The woman I helped at Christmas. There's more to her story than you know." In the next few minutes, Alex revealed everything. Agnes's former profession, her connection to John, and the plan he and Olivia had devised to help her. John's face paled as Alex spoke, recognition and shock mingling in his eyes. Catherine's, on the other hand, seemed torn between concern and a reluctant admiration for her children's compassion. "Miss Peterson," John murmured, his voice barely audible, "I had no idea. How could I not have recognized her?" "Don't you understand?" Alex pleaded, tears in his eyes. "We can't just ignore her. She did so much for this community, for you, Dad. She deserves our help." The silence that followed was deafening. John seemed to be wrestling with his own emotions, long-buried memories resurfacing. "Alex," Catherine finally spoke, her voice soft but firm, "we understand your intentions are good, but you can't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. There are systems in place, trained professionals to handle situations like this." "But those systems failed her," Olivia interjected, surprising everyone with her vehemence. "If it weren't for Alex Agnes would still be alone on the streets. The argument escalated, voices rising as emotions overflowed. Accusations of irresponsibility mingled with passionate appeals for compassion. Meanwhile, at the shelter, Agnes was having her own revealing conversation with Sarah. The two were sitting in a quiet corner, mugs of steaming tea between them. "Agnes," Sarah began gently, "you mentioned there was more to your story. I feel like understanding your past might help us build a better future for you." Agnes nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the mug in her hands. "I suppose it's time to face some ghosts," she murmured. With a trembling voice, Agnes began to unearth long-suppressed memories. She spoke of the accident that took her family, of how guilt and grief consumed her. She revealed how, in her despair, she had pushed away everyone who tried to help her, convinced that she didn't deserve love or compassion. "I chose the streets," Agnes admitted, silent tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Say it felt like a fitting punishment for my failure to protect my family." Sarah listened, her heart breaking for Agnes's pain, but also filled with admiration for her strength. "Agnes," she said softly, "you've carried that burden for too long. The accident wasn't your fault. You deserve a second chance at life." At that moment, Alex burst into the shelter, his face etched with conflicting emotions after the argument with his parents. Seeing Agnes crying, he rushed to her side. "Agnes, what's wrong?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Looking at Alex's young, worried face, Agnes felt a surge of maternal affection she hadn't experienced in years. Slowly, she began to share her story with him as well. Alex listened, horrified and moved. When Agnes finished, he took her wrinkled hand in his. "Agnes, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You're not alone in this. We're going to help you rebuild your life." As this touching scene unfolded at the shelter, news of the Walker family's involvement with a local homeless woman began to spread through the Willow Creek community. Opinions quickly divided. Some praised Alex's compassion and the family's willingness to help someone in need. Others expressed concern about a minor's involvement with a stranger from the streets. Rumors and speculation ran rampant. At City Hall, the mayor called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Some council members argued that Agnes's story could inspire more community action to combat homelessness. Others feared it might attract more homeless individuals to Willow Creek. The controversy reached its peak when an influential city council member, known for his conservative views, made a public statement. "It's irresponsible to allow our children to become involved with potentially dangerous individuals," he declared in an interview with local television. "As noble as young Alex's intentions may be, we must prioritize the safety of our community." The statement hit Willow Creek like a bombshell. Suddenly, what was a story of compassion had transformed into a heated debate about public safety and social responsibility. For Alex and Agnes, the consequences were immediate and devastating. The city council, pressured by the controversy, decided to review the policies of the shelter where Agnes was staying. There were rumors that they might restrict access for unaccompanied minors, effectively preventing Alex from visiting Agnes. When Alex heard the news, he was devastated. "They can't do this," he protested, tears of frustration in his eyes. "Agnes needs us now more than ever." Agnes, in turn, felt the familiar weight of guilt settling upon her again. Maybe it's for the best, Alex," she said sadly. "I don't want to cause trouble for you or your family." As night fell over Willow Creek, the situation looked bleak. Alex and Agnes, whose unlikely connection had inspired so many, now faced the possibility of being separated. The community was divided, and the future uncertain. But amidst the darkness, a spark of determination still flickered in Alex's eyes. He wouldn't give up without a fight. Somehow, he would find a way to overcome this new obstacle and fulfill his promise to help Agnes. The battle was far from over. The storm raging outside the Walker mansion seemed to mirror the emotional turmoil within. Determined to find something, anything that could help Agnes, Alex rummaged through the dusty attic, illuminated only by a dim flashlight. His fingers brushed against an old box, tucked away behind some forgotten luggage. "What's this?" he murmured, pulling the box closer. Inside, he found a collection of yellowed letters, faded photographs, and a weathered diary. His eyes widened as he recognized his deceased grandmother's handwriting. Heart pounding, he began to read. As the words unfolded before him, Alex felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The letters revealed a shocking family secret. Agnes wasn't just his father's former teacher, she was his grandmother's lost sister. "It can't be," Alex whispered, his mind reeling with the implications. A detailed flashback in his grandmother's diary painted a vivid picture of the past. 1945, Willow Creek Young Sisters. Eleanor and Abigail Peterson were inseparable. Eleanor, the elder, was the sensible and responsible one. Abigail, 3 years younger, was the dreamer, full of plans to change the world through education. Everything changed when Henry Walker arrived in town. Wealthy, charming, and ambitious, he captured the hearts of both sisters. A love triangle formed, filled with whispered promises and secret rendezvous. When Eleanor announced her engagement to Henry, Abigail's heart was broken. On the night before the wedding, in a moment of despair and betrayal, Abigail and Henry shared a night of forbidden passion. Months later, Abigail discovered she was pregnant. Fearing scandal, Henry and Eleanor forced her to leave Willow Creek, promising to care for the child in secret. Abigail left heartbroken, vowing never to return. The child, a girl, was raised as Eleanor and Henry's own, never knowing the truth about her biological mother. Alex dropped the diary, his mind in turmoil. Agnes wasn't just a great aunt no one knew about. She was his father's real mother. Legs shaking, Alex descended the stairs, the documents clutched to his chest. He found his parents in the living room, oblivious to the emotional storm about to erupt. "Dad and Mum," Alex began, his voice trembling, "there's something you need to see." In the next few minutes, the room was filled with gasps of shock, vehement denials, and finally, the heavy silence of recognition. John Walker, pale and shaken, finally spoke. I always knew there was something strange about my birth. But this," Catherine, tears in her eyes, embraced her husband. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I didn't know everything," John admitted. "Just rumors, whispers. I never imagined." Alex watched his parents, a mixture of compassion and frustration growing inside him. "We have to tell Agnes. She deserves to know the truth." At the shelter, Agnes was having a quiet afternoon when Alex arrived, accompanied by his parents. The grave expressions on their faces immediately alarmed her. "What is it?" she asked, her heart quickening. With gentleness and care, Alex and John revealed the shocking truth. Agnes listened in silence, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. When they finished, Agnes stood up abruptly, stumbling backward. "No," she whispered. "This can't be true." "Agnes," John said softly, reaching out to her. "I know it's a shock, but—" "A shock!" Agnes cried, years of suppressed pain and anger erupting at once. "You stole my life, my daughter." The shelter room echoed with Agnes's sobs, decades of loss and loneliness finally finding release. Alex, tears in his own eyes, reached out to her. "Agnes," he said softly, "I know nothing can undo what was done. But you're not alone anymore. You have a family now." Agnes looked at Alex's kind face, then at John and Catherine. Slowly, the anger in her eyes gave way to something more complex, a mixture of pain, relief, and perhaps a flicker of hope. "I've been alone for so long," she whispered. "So long." John knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Aunt Abigail." "No, Mom," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Can we start over? Please, let us be a part of your life." The news spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. The story of the homeless teacher, who was actually part of the town's most prominent family, captured everyone's imagination. Reactions were mixed. Many expressed compassion, touched by the tragedy and redemption of Agnes's story. Others, however, were quick to judge, questioning the morality of those involved and speculating about the implications for the Walker inheritance. For the Walker family, the revelation brought both challenges and opportunities. They faced the difficult task of integrating Agnes into their lives while dealing with public scrutiny. "Perhaps we should make an official announcement," Catherine suggested during a tense family meeting. "No," Agnes interjected, surprising everyone. "There have been enough secrets. Let's just live our lives and let the truth speak for itself." In the days that followed, Agnes oscillated between moments of joy at her newfound family and periods of profound sadness for the lost time. She struggled to reconcile her identity as Agnes, the teacher and homeless woman, with her new role as the lost matriarch of the Walker family. Alex, observing Agnes's internal struggle, felt the weight of his discovery. He had wanted to help, but had he only brought more pain? One evening, he found Agnes alone in the garden of the Walker mansion, where she had reluctantly moved in. "Agnes," he called softly, "are you okay?" She turned to him, a sad smile on her face. "Oh, Alex, you have such a good heart. Did you know it was your kindness that brought me back to life?" Long before we discovered our connection, Alex felt tears welling up in his eyes. "I just wanted to help." "And you did, my dear," Agnes said, embracing him. "You gave me a second chance, a family. It's scary and complicated, but it's also a precious gift." As they stood there, embraced under the stars, Alex realized that this wasn't the end of the journey, but only the beginning. The truth had been revealed, but the real work of healing and reconciliation was yet to come. The Walker family, once divided by secrets and misunderstandings, now faced the challenge of rebuilding itself, and at the center of it all was Agnes, a woman who had lost everything, only to rediscover a new purpose and belonging through the act of kindness of a young boy. Willow Creek would never be the same. And for Alex, Agnes, and everyone involved, the future, though uncertain, shimmered with the promise of redemption and renewal. The days following the revelation were an emotional roller coaster for everyone involved, especially for Agnes. The Walker mansion, once a fortress of untouched privilege, now buzzed with a nervous, expectant energy. Agnes, installed in a luxurious guest room, often found herself staring out the window, lost in thought. Her reflection in the glass, a blend of her current appearance and echoes of her youth, seemed a perfect metaphor for her internal struggle. "Who am I now?" she murmured to herself one morning, her hands stroking the fine silk robe Catherine had lent her. Agnes, the teacher, the homeless woman, or a walker? John, grappling with his own conflicting emotions, tried to connect with Agnes each day. One particularly tense morning, he found her in the mansion's library. Mom," he began hesitantly, "I brought some family albums. I thought maybe you'd like to see—" Agnes looked at the albums, her heart quickening. "Is she there?" she asked softly. My daughter?" John nodded, gently opening one of the albums to reveal a photo of a young woman smiling, her eyes strikingly similar to Agnes's. The tears came instantly. Agnes traced the outline of the face in the photo with trembling fingers. "She was beautiful," she whispered. "Fine she was," John agreed, his own voice thick with emotion, "and she would have loved to have known you." Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Catherine worked tirelessly with lawyers and bureaucrats to legally restore Agnes's identity. The process was complex, involving decades of lost records and complicated inheritance issues. "It's a legal nightmare," Catherine admitted to Alex one evening, exhausted. "But it's the least we can do after everything she's been through." Alex, in turn, found himself in the unexpected role of family mediator. Tensions arose when some extended family members expressed concerns about the implications of the revelation for the Walker inheritance. "She appears out of nowhere and suddenly she's family," a distant cousin argued during a particularly tense family lunch. "How do we know this isn't some kind of scam?" Alex, his young voice trembling slightly but firm, replied, "Agnes didn't ask for any of this. She's family whether you like it or not. And family takes care of each other." His impassioned speech silenced the table, leaving many adults ashamed to have been morally outmaneuvered by someone so young. As the weeks passed, Agnes slowly began to reconnect with her lost identity. Accompanied by Alex and sometimes John, she visited places from her youth in Willow Creek. One afternoon, they stopped in front of the old school where Agnes had taught. The building, though renovated, still retained much of its original structure. "I used to stand on that corner every morning," Agnes said, pointing, a nostalgic smile on her face. "I'd greet each student by name." Alex observed a spark of life in Agnes's eyes that he hadn't seen before. "You must have been an amazing teacher," he commented. "I was," Agnes replied, a long-forgotten confidence coloring her voice. "And maybe I can be again, somehow." That idea planted a seed that would soon blossom into something beautiful. As the Walker family worked through their internal issues, the Willow Creek community also struggled to process the situation. Opinions remained divided, with some viewing the story as an inspirational tale of redemption, while others considered it a shameful scandal. However, a support group began to form, led by Sarah, the social worker who had tried to help Agnes for years, and Mrs. Davis, a former colleague of Agnes's from the school. The group dedicated itself to facilitating Agnes's transition back into society. "Agnes doesn't just need legal and financial support," Sarah explained during a group meeting. "She needs to feel like part of the community again." Initiatives were launched, a mentoring program where Agnes could share her life experience with at-risk youth, a project to renovate Agnes's old house, which had fallen into disrepair after her departure, and even a campaign to name the local library in her honor. One of the most emotional moments came when Agnes, accompanied by Alex and John, visited the local courthouse to sign the documents that officially restored her identity. With trembling hands, Agnes took the pen. She hesitated for a moment, looking at Alex and John. "It's okay," Alex encouraged her softly. "You deserve this." With a deep breath, Agnes signed her name, Agnes Peterson Walker, for the first time in decades. When she finished, silent tears streamed down her face. "Welcome back, Mrs. Walker," the court clerk said with a kind smile. John Toussaint, overcome with emotion, embraced Agnes. "Welcome to the family, Mom," he whispered. That evening, the Walker family hosted an intimate dinner to celebrate. The dining room table, usually formal and impersonal, was filled with laughter and animated conversation. Midway through dinner, Agnes stood up, silencing everyone with a gentle clink of her glass. I want to say something," she began, her voice trembling but determined. "For so long, I felt lost. Without a place, without a family, but now—" She paused, looking around the table, at John, who had become the son she never got to raise, at Catherine, whose strength and determination had made all of this possible, at Olivia, who regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration, and finally at Alex, the boy whose act of kindness had started it all. "Now I know where I belong," Agnes continued, tears shining in her eyes. "It won't be easy. We have a lot to overcome, a lot to learn about each other, but I'm ready for this journey. I'm ready to be Agnes Peterson Walker." The room erupted in applause and emotional embraces. Alex, tears in his eyes, was the first to hug Agnes. "I knew it," he whispered. "I knew from the first day that you were special." Agnes smiled, holding Alex's face in her hands. "And you, my dear boy, reminded me what it means to be human again." As the night wore on, filled with stories, laughter, and plans for the future, it became clear that this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. The Walker family, once fractured by secrets and misunderstandings, was now united by love, forgiveness, and the promise of a shared future. And at the center of it all was Agnes, teacher, survivor, grandmother, finally home, finally whole. Her journey of overcoming and transformation was far from over, but now, for the first time in decades, she looked to the future with hope and anticipation. The night ended with Agnes standing on the mansion's porch, looking up at the stars. Alex joined her quietly. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. Agnes smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her entire face. "I'm thinking about all the possibilities, Alex, about all the chapters yet to be written." And so, under the starry Willow Creek sky, a new story began to unfold, a story of redemption, love, and the transformative power of a simple act of kindness. Snow fell softly on Willow Creek, blanketing the town in a white, silent embrace. It was Christmas Eve again, Exactly 1 year after the fateful encounter between Alex and Agnes that changed so many lives, the Walker mansion, once a fortress of formality and emotional distance, now pulsed with life and warmth. Twinkling lights adorned the windows, and the sound of laughter and animated conversation echoed through the halls. In the grand foyer, a majestic Christmas tree stood tall, decorated not just with expensive ornaments, but also with handmade creations, a perfect blend of old and new, just like the family that now gathered around it. Agnes, dressed in a stylish red sweater, her grey hair neatly arranged in a simple but elegant updo, was at the center of it all. Her face, once etched with weariness and despair, now glowed with renewed vitality. "Grandma, tell that story again," pleaded little Emily, the newest addition to the Walker family, John and Catherine's adopted daughter. Agnes smiled, pulling the little girl onto her lap. "Which story, my love?" "The one about the teacher who got lost and was found by a Christmas angel." Emily's eyes widened with anticipation. "Yes, that one." As Agnes began her now familiar narrative, Alex watched the scene from the doorway of the foyer. At 13, he had grown a few inches taller in the past year, but his face still held the same compassion and curiosity that led him to approach Agnes on that cold night a year ago. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Olivia's voice startled Alex. His sister, now 17, joined him, a soft smile on her face. "Who knew your small act of kindness would change everything?" Alex nodded, reflective. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream, but then I see her smile or hear her laugh, and I know it's real." The year hadn't been easy for the Walker family. There were moments of tension, heated arguments, and bitter tears. The truth about Agnes's past had shaken the family's foundations, forcing everyone to reevaluate not only their relationships, but also their values and priorities. John and Catherine had to navigate turbulent waters, both at home and in their businesses. The revelation about Agnes had generated some negative reactions in the corporate world, with some partners questioning the family's integrity. But for every challenge, there was a victory. The adoption of Emily, a decision made after months of reflection on the true meaning of family, brought a new light to everyone. And seeing Agnes blossom, reclaiming not only her identity but also her purpose, was a constant joy. One of the most powerful moments of the year occurred a few months after the initial revelation. Aunt Eleanor, Agnes's sister, who had participated in the scheme to send her away decades earlier, finally gathered the courage to visit. The meeting, which took place in the mansion's garden on a spring afternoon, was charged with emotion. "Abigail," Eleanor had said, her voice trembling, using Agnes's childhood name. I'm so sorry, so sorry." For a tense moment, Agnes remained silent, years of hurt and abandonment hanging between them. Then, slowly, she opened her arms. "Eleanor," Agnes whispered, tears streaming freely. "My sister." The embrace that followed was heart-wrenching, decades of pain and regret dissolving into forgiveness and renewed love. This reconciliation opened doors for other healings within the extended family. Cousins who had drifted apart, uncles who had questioned Agnes's legitimacy, all gradually were brought back into the family fold. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was in Agnes herself. With the unwavering support of her family and the community, she found the strength to not only rebuild her life, but also to use her experience to help others. In September, Agnes returned to the classroom, not as a full-time teacher, but as a special volunteer. Twice a week, she visited local schools, sharing her story and offering guidance to students facing adversity. "It's never too late for a new beginning," she would tell the youngsters, her eyes shining with a mixture of wisdom and hope. "And never underestimate the power of an act of kindness." The story of Agnes and the Walkers became a sort of modern legend in Willow Creek. It was a powerful reminder of the power of forgiveness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of truth and family. At City Hall, a new wing of the public library was inaugurated, the Agnes Peterson Walker Center for Education and Reconciliation. It was a community center dedicated to literacy programs, family counseling, and support for the homeless. Back in the present, in the Christmas-decorated living room, Agnes finished her story for little Emily. And so, my love, she concluded, the Christmas angel wasn't really an angel, but a boy with a heart big enough to see beyond appearances. Emily gazed up at Alex with wide eyes. You're a hero, Uncle Alex. Alex blushed, shaking his head. No, Emily. The real hero is Grandma Agnes. She never gave up, even when everything seemed lost. John approached, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder and another on Agnes's. I think we've all learned a lot this past year, he said, his voice filled with emotion. About family, forgiveness, and the importance of being honest with each other. Catherine joined them, Emily in her arms, and about how secrets can hurt generations, but the truth, however painful it may be initially, can heal. Agnes looked around at the faces of her assembled family, some connected by blood, others by love, all united by the choice to stand together despite adversity. You know, she said softly, for so long I thought my story was over. That I was beyond redemption or love, but you all proved me wrong. Every day is a new page, a new chance to write something beautiful. At that moment, as if orchestrated by fate, the grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight. It was officially Christmas. Merry Christmas, family, Alex said, his heart overflowing with gratitude and love. One by one, they all joined in a group hug. Agnes, John, Catherine, Alex, Olivia, Emily, and even Mr. Smith, the butler, who over the year had become more a member of the family than an employee. As the snow continued to fall outside, inside the Walker mansion, the warmth of family love melted away the last vestiges of the past. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would surely be more challenges ahead. But together, united by the power of a simple act of kindness that sparked a wave of change, they were ready to face anything. And so on that Christmas night in Willow Creek, a once fractured family celebrated not only the birth of Christ, but also their own rebirth, a living testament to the transformative power of love, truth, and compassion.